Yes, hi there. Hey, this is Greg coming to you from Glendale, California, where it is 4:49 in the morning, summertime, so of course the weather is nice. And this video is an elaboration on an exercise idea. If you can play around on my channel, you'll see that I've uploaded a number of videos about how I've been living on milk now for about 5 years. Every day I drink close to 2 gallons of usually non-fat or skim milk. 2 gallons would be about 7.5 liters for those people in countries other than America. And another thing I do now is exercise with these I always have these gallon containers in the fridge, and they're good for exercising. They all have handles, so you can pick them up and move them around in circles and such. And they would of course weigh differently depending on how much milk is in them. A full one weighs about 10 pounds. And I did do a prior video where I did show you myself exercising my arms with them. What I'm going to show you here, these gallon containers have screw-on caps. You screw them down tight, I suppose, to store your milk, or I guess it's up to you how tight you screw them. But even when you screw them down tight, I have discovered that you can still fit your fingernails into the very narrow gap between the lid and the container. And so when I'm working my hands and arms, sometimes that's an interesting way to lift the containers. And I'm going to show it to you. Let me see. I'm going to show you that I've put the containers now on a little it's sort of a rolling shelf that holds papers normally. Let me see, that light behind me is kind of disturbing, isn't it? Can I block it for you? Anyway, I'm a little bit distant from the computer because I get a better picture. But if you don't already understand the idea, it's basically slipping your nails in right to this little gap right here between the lid and the actual plastic container, and then you can move around. Again, then it's just your arm exercises. And this is easy now because the containers don't have much milk in them and they're light. When they get heavier, basically so far I don't have that strong a grip doing it this way. I'd have to think about how that works, but I don't have very long fingernails. They're not getting in under there very far, and then my thumb is at the back sort of holding on, but it kind of wants to slip too. So I'm doing this. Well, what I'm kind of curious about now is whether this is going to end up strengthening my fingernails. It sort of flexes them to get them, when you get them under there and then lift, it flexes your fingernails, and I would tend to think that sooner or later that would be strengthening. So far I don't know that I've seen it strengthening, but all these exercises make you more dexterous, and that's a good thing too. So I would think that this one will add to my dexterity as well. As a matter of fact, last night I was trying to slide out a shelf on my desk that's by my bed, and I couldn't really get a grip on the edge of the shelf to pull it out. And then I just slipped my fingernail under the shelf, pushed my fingernails up against it and pulled, and lo and behold, the shelf came sliding out. It was convenient. It was the use of the fingernails that I wouldn't have thought of if I hadn't been doing these exercises. Now you can do it with your thumbnails too. It's a little awkward. Like I have to kind of angle my body differently, but I am doing it. Now I've got my thumbnail under there, and the fingers are not. They're kind of gripping at the back. And that one does actually, I can only do it for 20 or 30 seconds. It's more of a strain than the thumbnail is more of a strain than the fingernails. So that's the idea. I think I'm going to see, well, I have noticed also it causes me to use my hands differently. Like I was going up an escalator which has the revolving hand, it's kind of a plastic rubber band that revolves around and around on the escalator. In the past I would have put my hands like this, gripping this band, but now, this time, because of my exercises, I was putting them like this on top of the band, just because I was more aware of my hands and my nails. And that was kind of interesting, just as a different sensation, a different way to use my hands. And I think that's always fun when you take something that you've done one way, and because of something else you're doing, in this case the exercises, you do the other thing a different way, which is gripping this band. And I'm sort of wondering if putting my hands like that on the band, well, if I'm using my hands differently a lot of the time, I wonder if that's going to change the hands or make them more dexterous, or somehow change the nails. Instead of gripping this way, to rest my hands on top. Because that's, if your nails are going to touch the band, or the tips of the fingers touch the band, that kind of flexes the nails as well. And flexing like that might strengthen them. That's going to be the interesting thing to watch. Now, if this isn't already silly enough, I was also playing, I also have a video where I exercise my feet and legs with these containers, and I was playing with slipping my toenail into this gap between the lid and the container. And of course that's sort of a fantasy exercise, because your toenails are much thicker than your fingernails and you can't slip them in the gap. But I thought it was sort of fun to try. Basically I was just putting my foot in the area of the gap and seeing what happened when I lift it. Well, of course it just slips. Well, the toenail does get under there slightly, the top of the nail, but it can't get under enough that you could lift. Oh, actually, I think the video on how I exercise my feet with the jugs is fun. If this is interesting to you, seek that one out. And usually I'm slipping my big toe into the gap between. I'll help myself with my hand. I'm slipping my big toe into the gap and lifting. You can see, well, you get kind of messed up on these videos because everything's backwards, but my big toe is in that gap, and I'm kind of waving it. But I was thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if you could, if trying to get your toenail in that gap actually gave you thinner toenails, eventually they might change. And then that got me thinking, if you got thinner toenails, maybe that would lead to you eating less. I don't know, I found that after I was playing with slipping my toenails into that gap, my appetite actually diminished. Because I was thinking, okay, get thinner toenails, get thinner in general. Get thinner toenails, get thinner in general. Get thinner toenails and get thinner in general. And it did help me eat less, at least last night. I don't know if it'll last. Maybe it's just a brief phenomenon. But from what I hear, everyone wants to get thinner. Just as a general ad for living on milk, it does, well, I'm 6'1", I stay at about 165, 170 living on milk, which is a really healthy weight and on the thin side. And I look pretty good in a mirror at this weight, I must say. So milk is good, it's good for both. Even if you didn't exercise with it, it's still really good for you. But the exercises are fun, and they do make you more dexterous. They're genuine exercises, they're not just a goof. So I hope all this is fun to you, interesting, maybe useful.